Welcome to episode 3 of Conscious Caregiver Conversations. I see Miss Samantha there. And as per usual, this is playing games with us. Oh, I think we got it. There it is. There it is.
Good morning.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I am hearing you beautifully loud and clear, but I must admit I have lost your face and your screen. So let me see. I can definitely hear you okay. Yeah, but I can hear you okay and everything. So let me see if I can fiddle, but we can keep talking. I can definitely hear you okay. So that is good.
That is so strange. I see you okay and I hear you okay.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I'm just going to, why don't we just continue the conversation and, yeah, hopefully I will see you on my screen, but I'm just glad if you can see everything, then it will record and we can share it and it's all good.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, sounds good to me. I am just doing a little sage and a little palo after a day of fun in the hospital. All of the excitement that comes up there. Mm-hmm.
And I love actually that that is almost a beautiful segue. You say using sage and smudging is actually a beautiful segue into today's topic, though, isn't it? Because we are following on from last week's topic of why do this work and why coming back to centre and really becoming a conscious caregiver has such a big impact. But today we want to follow on with that and actually talk about being our authentic selves and feeling like that is enough and that it's safe to be that. And part of what you and I do is some spiritual woo-woo stuff, like is, you know, working with energies, is clearing things, is, you know, getting rid of funky energy, which I definitely had a whole ton load of that yesterday. So where do we start with that, Jenna? Because I feel like that is such a big, it's such a big topic, but it's such a little topic in regards to, it's such a simple concept of feeling safe in our authentic selves and feeling like that is enough. And yet it's something that we actually struggle with. And especially I think coming into a facility, coming into, if you are caregiving in a facility, that you have to, you know, do certain things and meet certain standards. How can we navigate all of that?
Yeah, that is a great question. And, you know, I think if we take it back to last week and that word of self-preservation that dropped in, that is really, you know, knowing yourself and being comfortable and loving yourself and feeling safe to express yourself really plays into that idea of self-preservation. Because when you are trying so consistently to be someone other than yourself, it's soul sucking and it's energy sucking and it's depleting. And so, you know, it's this whole idea, and I think it's we talked about coming back to self being a foundational piece, and this builds on that. This is really a foundational piece as well. As you know, Samantha, I have two guided journals, actually. One is for anybody. It's called Coming Back Home, Remembering Your Truth. And then I have a second kind of offshoot of that initial journal, which is Coming Back Home Healthcare Edition. So I actually took the same structure that I used to write the first journal, and I carried it over and created one for healthcare providers that used examples and things like that that specifically address the challenges that healthcare providers face. Because just like we talked about last week, I feel like, if you are in healthcare, if you're working in hospitals or whatever you might be doing, you often don't feel understood by those who are outside of that. And frankly, that's been something that has been so special and so magical about Samantha's and my connection, because we do a lot of work with the same mentor, and we're surrounded by and mentored by, which there's nothing wrong with that, but surrounded by and mentored by a lot of women who don't understand, haven't been in our environment, at least not from the perspective of the caregiver. And so that's been one of the ways that Samantha and I have really been able to connect. And so that's why that journal is so special. And I'm so proud of it. But all that being said, the very first chapter is all about knowing yourself, because it really is a foundational piece. And so the whole idea is that we need to peel back the layers. We need to strip back. We really need to sit and reflect. And for some of us, this is going to be really hard, because we have decades of stuff that has built up over the years and designed who we are today, created who we are today. But peeling back those layers and really getting to the root of, who really am I? Who was I before my parents told me who I should be? Who was I before important adults like teachers or religious leaders or, Girl Scout leaders or whoever it might be? Who was I before they told me who I should be? Who was I before, whomever, fill in the blank, told me who I should be, right? And really think about, like, what is the essence of you? And this work, by the way, does not have to be spiritual. It doesn't have to be spiritual, but I will tell you that the spiritual aspect will add a layer, it will add insight, it will add information that you won't otherwise get. Because when you quiet your mind and you set the intention, make sure that you are protected in the circle, like we always do here when we have these conversations, and invite in that divine information, you will have an even more transformative experience. Because we get so bogged down and we get so stuck in the monkey mind, and we get so stuck in who important people in our lives tell us who we should be, who society tells us who we should be, that we really forget who we actually are. So it really involves, like, getting back to, like, who is Jenna, right? As an example, Jenna was somebody who loved to perform. Jenna was somebody who wanted to be on stage all the time. Jenna was somebody who loved to sing for other people, who loved to act, who loved community theater, who loved music. That was my essence. And it was really interesting. It doesn't take away from who I am today, or the fact that I'm a nurse, or, I feel that I was called to that role as well. But, I really had to sit there and think and go, Jenna, the authentic, the, person that I was, really wanted to be a stage performer, really wanted to be on Broadway, really wanted to be, the next Idina Menzel, or whoever is current now, that you can relate to. Like, that was my dream. But because of the fears and the concern and the protection and the limiting beliefs and all of the things of important people in my life that I was surrounded by, it was, well, that's not realistic. You can't support yourself on that dream. It was like the whole starving artist idea. You need to do something that's going to support you, that's going to provide a good financial foundation. I mean, all of these reasons. And then, of course, I was very fortunate when I first went to college that my parents did pay my tuition, but that comes with strings too. Because if mom and dad are footing the bill, then you're going to go to school for what mom and dad are comfortable with. So there's just all of these things, and that's just a very small example of the bigger picture. But there are just all of these things that we have to really sit in stillness, in the quiet, with a journal, with voice notes, whatever resonates for you, and really start to peel back, like, is this person who, constantly has to like join all of the extracurriculars and be the president or be this or be that, is that really me? Or is that the version of me that I created because that's what my parents wanted, or that's what my teachers said I should be, or that's what society says we should be? Like, that's where you have to start really looking at different aspects of yourself and going, is this really like Jenna? Or is this the Jenna I created because of other people?
Definitely. And I think, Jenna, I need to start taking notes as you're talking. So next episode, you might see me sit down, because I think there's actually a number of really key points in that. First of all, let's remember to put a link in the notes or the YouTube notes or whatever to your journals, because so many people feel like journaling has to be a certain thing or, whatever. And having a bit of a guided journal, especially like you said, centering around healthcare as well. So let's make sure we put that link to your journals in the comments. That was the first thing. The second thing is that definitely in our busy world, an underlying theme of what we're talking about here is actually taking time and actually being intentional and taking the time to sit with ourselves, to sit in heart center, to sit with a journal, to sit and do voice notes, and or to sit in private one-on-one conversation, and where you can really be mirrored and supported and reflected upon. So I think that's kind of like an underlying theme throughout the whole idea of what a conscious caregiver is. Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jenna, but I feel like it's actually sitting in space, like in a time and space that we give ourselves regularly to come back to center and to continually evolve and work out who we are. Like, this is all a journey of coming back to center, which I think we can almost unpack like on a completely different episode as well. But from here, I'd like to be able to ask you, so we're taking this time, we're looking at ourselves, we're looking to see, well, what has actually been externally placed upon us, where have our beliefs come from? And we're sort of figuring out who we are more and more and more every single day as we spend this time with ourselves. How can that impact us in our workplace? Or how does that impact us in our workplace?
That's a great question. And
I'm full of them today.
Always on it. But that's I think that's, well, as with everything, right? But that's multifaceted as well, because first of all, there's this piece of when we truly step into being our authentic selves, there's a freedom in that, right? Because we're finally feeling like, this is me, right? This is me, and I'm good with it, and what have you. But that's also going to be a little scary, because we are so used to being this version or many versions of who others think we should be, right? And I'm dealing with this right now as well, as I navigate, setting healthy boundaries and just, dealing with the stressors of, lots of things that I have to do as a leader. And because the truth of it is, with all of the work that I have, and, my fellow leaders have, we could probably live at the hospital. I mean, that's just the truth. Like, there's a lot on our plates, and we could probably live at the hospital. And so, some of my doing it scared when it comes to being my authentic self and really taking care of myself is, in a way, being the nervous system going, but myself. A long working 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 5+ days a week is not sustainable, right? So, as you get to know yourself, as you reacquaint yourself with yourself, it's going to feel super uncomfortable, So there's this freedom of being yourself, but then there's also going to be a whole lot of doing it scared, because especially if you've been, at a place for a little while and people have kind of gotten to know a certain version of you. I'll give a perfect example is the people pleasers, the quote unquote doormats, if you will. If people that you are working with, every time they ask you to do something, whether you have the space or do it to do it or not within your shift or your environment, but you're always the one to say yes, and you're mumbling under your breath and you're super frustrated, but you don't want to say no, so you're going to do it. Right? Yes, 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 yes. And then people start asking you to do stuff, and you're like, you know what? I can't always say yes. I'm going to make sure that my patients are good. I'm going to make sure that my stuff's done, whatever it might be. So there are times where you have to say no, or I can do it in 5 minutes, and that's uncomfortable for you. Like, people are going to respond to that, and it may not, probably not, most likely will not be positive initially, right? So, you're getting comfortable with this whole idea of, okay, I'm killing myself and I need to stop. And, me not doing everything for everyone is not a comment on who I am. It doesn't make me any less worthy, right? But then you start to step into it and you start to set those boundaries, and, it's not going to be easy. So as with anything in this journey, it is very multifaceted, but again, it goes back to that self-preservation. It's not a comment on who you are. You're not any less worthy than you were before because you said no, or I can't do it right now, or whatever it might be. But it's not easy. That being said, that's how you gain respect. That's how you gain, it's interesting. I'm going to misquote this terribly, but the other day I was actually a little bit triggered by one of my employees. And I know she didn't mean any harm and she wasn't doing anything to upset me, but she kind of left some things on the copier. And I had my door closed because I was maybe on the phone with somebody or something, and I had my door closed. And she left and didn't say anything to me about it. And, it's like after hours and I'm wanting to get out of work. And I was kind of triggered by it. I was annoyed. You know what I mean? But it was so interesting, never a coincidence, that it was either later that day or maybe the next day. I saw a meme here on Instagram, and I think I actually shared it to my stories, that said, you're not actually triggered by somebody else's, you're not actually triggered by somebody else walking all over you or something like that. You're actually triggered by your own lack of boundaries. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh. You know what I mean? I was kind of like,
yeah.
Okay, you know what I mean? So, yeah, just, stuff like that. It's not always easy when you start setting those boundaries, but there are things that, things you have to do for yourself. So again, just to kind of recap, like I said, it goes back to that self-preservation. You're going to feel freer. And you're not going to be spending so much time putting on these masks, right? Putting on these masks of who other people think you should be. But at the same time, you're also going to have to potentially face or confront those people who think you should be some type of way. And so that's where the growth happens. resistance. That's where it's uncomfortable. That's where it gets sticky. And that's where you just have to do it scared and just stay
Mm.
consistent and just keep practicing those habits because it gets easier, but it's going to take time. Like, I'm never going to sit here and tell anybody, like, yeah, just, meditate for an hour every day, figure out who you are, start being that person, and poof, like rainbows and
You're all good.
butterflies, So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think boundaries is a really good example. Like you said, it's so multifaceted. And as we start spending that time with ourselves and uncovering really who we are, setting healthy boundaries is just like one branch that comes out of that, that is a true expression of who you are. And just a very quick, because I'm conscious of time and we're trying to keep these conversations very potent, but a very good example of that, I guess, for more like a clinical on the floor example, is when you're asked to do extra hours or extra shifts, and having a deep understanding of where you're at. And like for me personally, I've dealt with quite a number of months of fatigue and postnatal depletion and all the things. And I am a people pleaser, or recovering people pleaser. And so I have found it very hard to say no. But when we spend that time with ourselves and we actually come, okay, what does my body need right now? What does my mind, soul, body need right now? Then you can actually come from a place that that you can navigate that. And that is also the other point I want to make here, is that's the also like really highly advantageous benefit of working with a mentor or coach or trusted colleague or someone that you can kind of like nut these things out. Because I was actually given a strategy of how to say no, and that's not saying no initially. So your boss comes and asks you, can you do like extra hours, can you do a shift tomorrow, or whatever it might be. For me, it was still very hard to say no, I can't straight out. So I would say, can I check in with my childcare, with my husband, whatever, and let me get back to you. And I know that sounds so simple, but for me, that then gave me time and space to really, again, check in with myself. What was I capable of? How could I juggle everything that I do? And then I was able to come back with an answer that I wasn't going to regret when I rock up at the shift tomorrow and I'm like, why did I say yes to this? And that then falls back into the cycle of self-preservation and trying to help ourselves and our wellness and our well-being before we hit burnout. And we're like, well, why do we get there? Well, it's actually a lot of our responsibility to deal with that. And that's part of this conscious caregiver, I guess, commitment to ourselves. Definitely. So I just wanted to pop that in there, because working with like a coach or a mentor or having avenues like these conversations are so important to then give you the tools and help you unpack all of this, because we are very complex creatures, aren't we?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very true. So I am conscious of time. So Jenna, is there anything we would like to? I feel like we've given some really solid points, and yet we've only just really touched the surface on what it's the power of coming back home and what we can do to really facilitate that and start feeling like we are enough and we are worthy for just being ourselves, and that we can be ourselves even within our institutions, our healthcare systems, and all those things. So is there anything you would like to finish on to wrap all that up?
Yeah, no, I think yet again you did a nice job of summing things up, and that was a perfect example, which we will definitely expand upon more because boundaries is such a huge topic, and there's so much more that I could say on that. But I truly think that that is for another time. I think the other thing too, and something that I kind of touched on with regard to the discomfort that people start feeling when they really start stepping fully into their authentic selves, is that, for a while, and again, this is going to take a lot of just, getting grounded, coming back to self. Samantha touched on it when she said, really being intentional and taking time, slowing down and taking time. And, this work does require us to have some quiet time, to have some time to ourselves, whatever that looks like and whatever nourishes our soul. But we really, we need to take that time to reconnect with ourselves. And, initially, as we're, doing this work and stepping into our authenticity more and more, there's going to be times, and I said it to Samantha, and it's what kind of spurred on this continuation of the conversation. I was having a really hard time on Saturday feeling safe in my body. And that's where that, frenetic nervous system comes in, the anxiety, that kind of stuff, when you're feeling those anxious feelings and you have the sweaty palms and you have the tight chest and you have the tight throat and all these things. I was actually in a space that morning where I was doing some things around my apartment, and then I was getting ready to go and volunteer at the Fall Fest. That's something that we as directors do. Something else that I love to share with y'all about leadership, because there's a lot that we have to do outside of just our time during the week. We also volunteer in the community and do a lot of different things to represent our facilities. And I was going to be volunteering with a couple other ladies at the Fall Fest, and I caught myself. I had this awareness of the fact that I was really, and again, I've been doing this work for 3 years, but I was in this space of being really uncomfortable, very concerned, if you will, with other people's perception of me. Like, am I safe to be myself? Are people going to accept me for who I am? Am I going to say something stupid or, whatever? But it was very, just this moment where, I was like, I think we really need to talk about not only being your authentic self, but, being safe in your body, feeling safe in your body. And that is something that we just have to continuously work on, because I have found, not only in the beginning, but also, as I go through different transitions and different phases and stages of my life and of this work, that I find myself from time to time, and definitely found myself in the beginning, not even sure that I liked myself, because I had gotten used to and really based so much of my self-worth around what other people thought of me. So, and as you move through this, and as you become more and more comfortable with yourself, that's another aspect that we have to get comfortable with is, do I love myself enough that I don't really care what they think about me? If they have an issue with me, if they don't like who I am, and, granted, that's barring, like, it's not, I'm not giving you license to be a jerk, right? Like, being a good person, but just being different, being outgoing, being, whatever it might be, being kind of wacky, being woo-woo, whatever it might be. But do you love yourself enough? Can you love yourself enough that their opinions are secondary or further down the list, because you have to live with yourself every day? What they think doesn't matter, but so much of who we are and how we've grown in society is we have to be worried about what everyone else thinks. That was literally like, how I was brought up, and different things that, I navigated as I was a young adult is, well, what is this person going to think of you? You don't want this person to get upset. You don't want to burn this bridge. You don't want to, whatever it might be. And so it's a huge shift in not being worried about what everyone else thinks and being more worried about, like, how do you feel about you? And that's then where, the safety starts to come in. So that's all an extension of, stepping into this, authentic version of you is, then there's this other piece of, coming back to self and really learning to love you for you, and not the version of you that other people want you to be. So that's,
that is so powerful.
Yeah.
Jenna, like not just in caregiving, but just in life. You know, that's yeah, that's so huge. Maybe we'd need to do an actual conversation just about self-love and what that can look like and different self-love practices, because that literally flows into every aspect of your life, including your career. So
yeah, 100%, 100%. Because when you really start to know and understand your worth, and that you are worthy of everything that you could desire, all the love, all the abundance, everything, just for being you, like literally for just having incarnated on this planet, then you start to look at things differently as far as what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not.
Yeah, it does give you a lot of clarity in that regard as well. And that whole coming back to center, you know, we say boundaries is one branch that comes off this work, but it's also, you know, gaining clarity, you know, gaining peace and, you know, contentment in ourselves. Like there's so many branches that stem from coming back to center and coming to learn about yourself. And it is a journey. That's the other thing I wanted to touch on. Like, this is always a journey. It's always ever evolving. It's not like you say, yep, I know who I am, like I like these things, I want to be this person, all this kind of stuff. It's ever evolving. Like I wasn't who I was, you know, a year ago, and that's beautiful. Like we don't have to just pick one thing and then we're that forever. It's a constant evolution, isn't it? And that's beautiful. I think we need to stop trying to be just in a box and just be one or two different things. Like, yeah. So that is beautiful, Jenna. That's just like so powerful. And I feel like every conversation we open a can of worms to like all these other aspects and all these different layers, which is why I feel like we're just going to be on here for so long, like as in, you know, so many weeks, months, years doing this work. So again, I just wanted to invite any of our listeners to drop in any questions or comments that you might have, you know, tag, share, like we do share on YouTube as well. So you can actually use these videos in any education as well. Please let us know, please contact us. And we're here to support, you know, to support our community and to grow this community of those caregivers that are choosing to go down the path of really becoming conscious and aware of themselves and into their practice. And it has, like we've talked about, such a big impact. So thank you, Jenna. I really love my Thursday mornings. They are so good and so good to look forward to.
I love it too. I love it too. And it's so good to see you, and have an amazing day, friend.
I will. Thank you, beautiful.